I'm going to turn these on. Okay, I want to turn off video.
Thank you for coming. Can you hear me? Thank you for coming to tonight's Lakeland Lecture Series. We are honored to present Patrick Galbraith, who is the author of the Otaku Encyclopedia. Some of you have seen this in our library, and a number of my students. I'm Ned Loader. I teach U.S.-Japan relations at Lakeland College, and that has a pop culture component to it. I used to teach Japanese film and media studies in the National University as well. So I'm excited to introduce our speaker tonight. I ran this book by 30, 40-year-old otaku who were Gundam fans, and they are very skeptical about, American researchers, but after a few moments of perusing the book, okay, and through some Fujoshi fans, and they look through the book and, we are left out of this one, we are always left out of everything, and then they thumb through, and so this is an otaku approved text, and so we are very fortunate to have the authority with us tonight. He's working on his PhD at Tokyo University under very famous Professor Yoshimi Sensei. And it's been a long, hard fight in Japan, as well as the rest of the world, to get popular culture studies taken seriously as an academic discipline. So we're very pleased to welcome Patrick Galbraith. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for that very generous introduction. I'm actually not all that interesting. I hope you forgive me for not wearing my wig tonight. But I'm sorry. But we talked about taking things seriously. I have to take it seriously. So I was actually informed by my PhD committee that I couldn't be seen at school in my costume. So there's some censorship going on here where I'm from. I've been told, got to rein it in a little bit. Anyway, so tonight we'll be talking about, there we go, Akihabara. For those of you who don't know, Akihabara is about a 500 by 300 meter stretch of Tokyo that's filled with electronic shops and computer stores, anime, and stuff like that. So I came to Akihabara in 2004, and I started observing changes going on in the city and in the culture. The people who gathered there are people called otaku. So today's presentation is a combination of two elements. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. One element is urban transformation, Akihabara. The second interrelated element is culture change, otaku. So Akihabara, otaku, city and culture change is what I'll be talking about today. First, a little bit of an explanation about who I am and what I do. I came to Tokyo in 2004, first as a journalist, actually. I wasn't trained in any academic discipline whatsoever. I just came here to write about anime, manga, and so on and so forth because I love it. I love it too much. I couldn't fit in where I was from, so I said, I'll go to Tokyo and I'll keep a blog about what I do in Tokyo. This is that blog, Otaku 2. Part of the project that I was doing with friends together for Otaku 2 was a tour. So we started doing a tour of Akihabara, which is kind of like this hub of otaku culture. Everyone knows about it, everybody goes there. In 2004, it kind of became like a lightning rod. People from around the world were going there. Actually, Lonely Planet had a section of their, Tokyo guide. It was about Akihabara, so we wanted to kind of introduce the place we loved to friends and to people from overseas. So I started doing this sort of thing, creating tours, creating contents. I first had an online encyclopedia of otaku terms. It's kind of like Wikipedia. Then that kind of got subsumed into Wikipedia, and so I instead wrote a book about otaku terms and so on and so forth. So trying to create kind of a database of information about this culture. And as I said, one thing I did was a tour in Tokyo. This looks very strange to you, I'm sure, but actually at the time I started this tour, which was 2007, this was absolutely normal. Everybody was wearing costumes on the street in Akihabara between about 2006 and 7, 2006, 7, 8, depending on how you kind of break it down. As early as in late 1990s, there was people who were cosplaying in Akihabara. These are people we kind of saw from overseas, but actually this whole big boom in cosplaying was occurring right as we were on the streets, my circle of research friends and myself. And so part of my project was actually to penetrate into the groups of people on the street. The fastest way to do this was to wear a costume at the time. The fact that nobody wears a costume in Akihabara anymore is actually just part of the point I want to make tonight. There has been vast changes in Akihabara, and those changes I felt bodily. I'm an ethnographer, so what I do is I kind of take notes, I talk to people, I walk around, and that sort of thing. And so I use my body and my perception as a tool, and the costume was part of this. Okay, so a brief background about what Akihabara is. I'm not going to go through all of this. Probably you know most of it anyway. But Akihabara basically was an electronics market after World War II. Huge black market after World War II. All the way from Akihabara Station to the neighboring town of Ueno. The whole area was kind of like a plane, flat plane that was bombed to rubble. And they started building stalls there that they had electronic parts. There's two reasons for this. One reason is because a lot of railroad lines historically connected in Akihabara. Actually, Manseibashi, which is one of the most famous spots in Akihabara today, used to be the east gate of Edo. So it's really kind of like an interesting cross-section. People would come from Chiba, people would come from Ueno, people would come from all over to this area, which is why actually the original the transportation museum was in Akihabara, right at that spot, where all these train lines connected. It's no longer there, it's now in Saitama, but the reason why is because of that historical kind of foot traffic going on there. So that's one reason. The second reason was because of Tokyo Electronics University, which is located very near to Akihabara. So you had parts coming in, especially parts that were coming from US forces, occupation forces. And these high-quality import parts were being put together by the students from Tokyo Electronics University. They would come down to Akihabara, work part-time in the stalls, building what's called knockdown radios, so transistor radios. And these people are called radio boys. If you look through the old books, they called them radio boys. So radio boys and knockdown radios were kind of the proto-otaku culture in Akihabara. So it goes on like that. It becomes kind of like the largest electronics area in all of Japan. At one point, people say that about 10% of the national electronics market was in Akihabara. So we're talking about a huge concentration. And also I want to point out to you, there was also a huge boom going on around consumer appliances around the 1960s, 1958 or 9, I'm not sure. About 8% of households had a television. By 1969, 95% had a television. So you can see there's a huge boom going on in household appliances, especially televisions surrounding like the imperial marriage, the moon landing, not the moonwalk, moon landing. So all kinds of things were going on in Japan. People needed a television, and they went down to Akihabara to kind of buy tomorrow on display today. The first high-rise building there was Radio Kaikon. It's still there today. It was erected in 1962. It was kind of a showcase for the three treasures of the day: washing machines, refrigerators, and televisions. So if you look back at the old advertisements from the time, what you see is very different from what you see today. Not otaku kind of like putting together their computers or something. What you see is families. Yes, let's go down there to Kojimachi Denki or something. It's a very different image you see in Akihabara at that time.